Here's a riddle for you all today. What do all these images have in common? I'll just put on a little Jeopardy timer, you know. Well, if you've guessed textures, then you're absolutely correct. Today, I'm talking about textures because who doesn't love to spice up their work with just a little bit of grit, right? Now, I gave you guys a set of brushes, right? And they have a lot of different textures in it. So I'm going to be trying to recreate these textures using those brushes. And hopefully, once you see how they can be used, you'll find it a little bit more intuitive to include them, incorporate them into your own works, or do whatever the fancy you want with them, right? Like maybe you decide you want to do texture for all your works. That's an option. Like some artists will exclusively work in texture, but that's not me. I like a little bit of like smoothness, like a good balance, like salt and pepper, right? So let's first start out with our basic wool texture. I'm just gonna put down a generic color for our wool wet tour. Lay down your shadows. Push it slightly cooler, so it's a little more interesting for people to look at, right? Don't just want darker value, because just darker value I feel like can feel very monotonous, especially if you're not going for that monotony. Now here is where some textures might come into play. Number 93 has some great textures, right? You might even consider this one, which is a little bit of speckle. That will be really helpful for helping create some of that dotting kind of vibe. But right now I'm just laying down the lights and darks of the sweater, because before texture, all else is getting your lights and darks. And so if you don't have that down, don't even think about starting to play around those brushes, because it's not going to look that great. All right, you can see how there's like still a distinct light and dark region if you squint your eyes. I'm gonna get that in there. Balance out that texture with a clean edge. Okay, so now we have ourselves a pretty good solid foundation for us to start playing around with our textures. Get that in there, get in there, get in there. So now I'm gonna start experimenting with what type of brush might work for this, right? So occasionally I might use this brush, just a tad of it, to kind of break up those shadows so it gets a little bit of an edge of the brush. I'll occasionally bring in this one because it has this beautiful kind of chalky feel, almost like wool. And so with knit pattern, the goal isn't to individually do all the knit work, because that's going to drive you crazy. Your goal is to simulate enough of that knit pattern through the lights and dark area, especially the dark area, and then let your audience do most of the work, right? Right, this is reading as more of like a woolly texture already, even though it might not necessarily look like a knit sweater. All right, let's see what some other patterns we got. This one might look more like a wool sweater because it has like these hash marks, which are more indicative of this kind of patterning. So maybe we'll do that one a little bit. And of course, gotta be careful with how much texture you're putting in here, because too much texture can make it super busy for the viewer's eyes. So you want to be somewhat limited with the types, number, and amount of texture you add in here. And just make sure that your values are good, and then that you supplement it with, like, say there's a button right here, right? Go back to our regular brush. Where you at? Where you at? Right here. Then we get that shadow in there. Get that really dark shadow in there. Squint your eyes, squint your eyes, squint your eyes. Make sure you can see stuff. Or make sure you can't see anything, so then you can totally simplify this baby. Super generic neck or something. I don't know. Do it like this or something like that. And then give him that nice coarse shadow. Maybe I'll balance it out with a little bit of that warmth. Right? Just a tad bit of warmth. And then the shadow can run a little bit more greenish, as if it's reflecting that sweater a little bit. And this side is going to be still kind of warm, the shadow, because it's mostly reflecting the skin or whatnot. Right there. See this little doggle? Gotta get that in there real quick. And then we're gonna make it really dark here, as though this is like super different from the bottom part of the sweater. Right? I'm making sure I'm getting the basic structure of that sweater before I get the texture and everything. And then I'm coming back in with a little bit of that texture. You're trying to ease some of that transition, because unlike regular clothing or fabric, the transition between light and dark is a little more stippled. So you gotta use a brush texture to help you work that in there. And so, get that baby warm light in there. Get that real darkness in there. Get that real darkness in here. Not a good choice. See what I mean by, like, too much texture can be detrimental to the piece? That just distracted your eye from, like, the actual sweater. So knowing that, that means I'm just gonna do a nice soft brush or something like that, right? Clean that up. All right, and then you got your somewhat of a sweater. Throw in a little bit of this type of texture, see if it'll help break up some of that form. There we go. Right, just ever so slightly, just a little bit of texture creates this illusion that this is like not a smooth shirt. Even though it doesn't necessarily read like a knit sweater, it's still fine. And voila, we got ourselves a sweater. Now let us try doing some jean tech. There are your jeans. We have some really nice brushes that will help you really create that jean texture. So let me shrink this down. And for jeans, I am going to do this type of blue. And we're going to start out, again, we're going to start out with very clean brushwork, right? We want to lay down our foundation first. Before we do anything else. So jeans, let's pretend these are jeans. So what we're going to do is we're going to go cooler and go darker in value in order to capture the shadows. I'm using this 128 brush again, the chalky one, to create the shadows because jeans, of course, aren't very smooth, at least for like real jeans. Skinny jeans may be a little more smooth, in which case you can like get away with not putting too much texture in it. And then the trick about jeans is that they get super desaturated as you get closer to the light, and they get sort of warmer to create that kind of yellowy vibe, right? See right here? Just be careful with it, especially around the knee area because that's where you're gonna get the most stress. I'm giving some bounce light right in the inner corner because light is gonna bounce back onto the back of your thigh. Take my number 40 brush again, go lighter in value and desaturate it slightly so you get that really nice edge work, right? Go warmer, tad bit, go slightly lighter, and we're gonna go ahead and use that hash brush again and slightly get in the knee area. And then we're gonna go in. Is this the brush? Yes, this is the brush. And then add just a bit of that texture up to the top part. We're going to increase the size of our brush so the texture reads well. Bring back this brush just a tad bit, and then we're gonna go in and add our darks that come from the jean sort of zipper area. Cool that baby down. Using our 128 brush in order to transition the color a little bit. And then there's like a ring of light that comes from the seam of the jean, and for that we're just using our regular brush. Go desaturated and lighter. Bring it all the way down. And then remember to pair that up with a dark edge. And we can do that with our number 93 brush. A little too big. Shrink that baby just a tad bit. And just do it just a little bit right here. We don't want it go too overboard again. And so then we're gonna go back to our regular 40 brush just to outline that whole edge. All right, and then you got yourself a good pair of jeans. We're just gonna try to break up that chunk of real lightness just a tad bit so it doesn't look super like unnatural. So it looks like there's a little bit of those kind of, you know, bend marks that you're seeing here. Go back, the valley's too dark. Yeah, something like that. So you got jeans, right? You might even consider doing a little bit of dots here and there at this area, lighter, in order to create that kind of stressed kind of look. But you don't want to go too overboard, obviously, so you just go just a tad bit, like ever so slightly, so it just makes the slightest difference. right? From far away, looks like jeans. I think we did pretty well. Now, what say you about fur texture, right? Well, I typically create fur the same way I do hair. When I do hair and fur, I like to be a little more loosey-goosey, and I use my trusty old number 40 brush. And again, we're thinking big O shapes. So let me pull up a picture. And for fur, let's do a sort of similar vibe. Let's lay down a nice base color. And what you're gonna also notice again, number 40 brush, because it has such a beautiful like tail end, like the brush edge, making fur with it is so easy. Like I don't even have to stress at all. So right here, again, we're gonna make sure we do our lights and darks. So I'm just using a soft brush right now to get our lights and darks. And then you come in with your other soft brush on the other side. And we make sure we get that beautiful warmth that we're capturing here. Push it slightly to the red. And then we're gonna come in with our Nassau number 40 and create our fur texture. See right there? Just moving in the direction of the fur, not stressing too much out, right? And I'm trying to vary the size of the brush marks so it seems more natural. I'd like to just use sort of very impressionistic kind of brushwork, like right here where I'm not necessarily drawing every single fur, but I'm giving the shape of the fur, which is typically enough for viewers to capture all the information they need, right? Because unless you're one of those photorealistic artists who do huge portraits of animals, there's really not much point to rendering every single little detail at the beginning stages, at least. And for me, I honestly don't feel the need to like render every single little fur that I see. Instead, I like to let you do some of the work. It's a collaborative effort, right? Art. And so I keep these edges pretty soft, like there's not a lot of hard edges here. Besides maybe here and there in order to kind of spice things up. See, even when I'm trying to create this type of rim light, you can see I just smartly remove some of that. And I just vary the sizes of those. Coming back with our number 128, because it's a nice, really easy gradual transition between values and color without being too harsh, yet also giving a little bit of texture to your work. So I just like to add that in there anytime I can or need to. We're gonna make our lives a little easier. I'm gonna try and put in a overlay on the edge to capture that bright ass sunlight. Let's go slightly redder. Nope. There we go. There we go. Look at that beautiful. And then maybe there's a little bit of that bounce light just coming from that side. So there we gotta get it to a more yellow orange kind of vibe, and sometimes I have to play around till I get it. So hard light maybe. All right, so I tend to switch between hard light and overlaid mode on my brushes and on my effects tab. And those ones are really good for just creating that really nice glow that comes from light source, which is why, obviously, that's why it's called light, hard light, soft light mode. And so don't work too hard trying to capture that kind of thing. Sometimes you can just cheese it a little bit, right? Like I did, just get the base colors down and then come in later with your filters and everything and then let them do the magic, right? Photoshop, you paid so much money for it, might as well make the full potential use out of it. And there you got Fern, look at it, baby. And I didn't even do that much brushwork, see? Like I basically just painted a base coat, added the shadows and the light, added some stripes, added the rim light, overlaid it, and then voila. And then the whiskers, you know, take your nice pressure hard brush, I guess it's called. Is that what it's called? Yeah, it's hard round pressure size. Then just do real quick, real thin ones, not as thick as I did. Right. Whiskers, whiskers, whiskers. You can even do a couple here and there, but not too much, obviously. We don't want to go overboard with our work. And the same idea goes for hair, right? Say if I were to want to spice up my hairs. Get your darks in there again. Maybe I'm gonna spice it up right now using a 150 kind of brush called Sampled Brush. And it looks sort of like those oil paint brushes that you might find in the stores. And help me create some of that fringe. Supposedly she has like a soccer mom haircut or something. I always regret whenever I cut my hair way too short because I definitely look like a soccer mom. Okay, get that dark in there, get that dark. Erase some of that. I want to make sure our silhouettes are looking spicy. Bump it up slightly to that yellow area to come in for that lighting. Okay, reduce the size of your brush. We don't want to get too many weird things in there because we're trying to carve out a nice highlight for that top of the head. We're gonna saturate our color just a tad bit and then we're gonna bump it up to that super bright highlight that would occur if she's super close to a light source or something. And maybe I say I want to add just a tad of like green or whatnot in there. I'm gonna go to that yellow section. Take maybe this brush and add just a bit of texture here and there. Let's say we try to explore a little bit with the preset textures that Photoshop has options for, because they can get sort of intensive or like a little bit overwhelming because of just how many options they have. And so let me do a new layer, hide this baby. Goodbye, kitty. And we're gonna do ourselves a nice base layer. And we're gonna play around with some of these options for textures, right? So if you press this half circle right here or double click your layer, it's gonna open up this section called Bevel and Emboss and called Texture right here. And so you see this first texture right here? It looks sort of like pavement, concrete kind of thing. If you lower the scale, you're going to get less of that concrete look. If you increase it, it's going to increase the scale, the size of those texture sizes. All right, so typically I do in the middle. If you do depth, lower your depth. It means the shadows contrast is going to be super high, whereas if you do just in the middle, it'll be okay. And then opposite, obviously, is going to pop out all those lights and everything. Well, what's the next option? You have this one, which is your diagonal stripes. Again, increase your depth, scale, increase your scale, decrease your scale. You barely see it. But this can help really create like those types of suit jacket things if you wanted to do like 1950s kind of traditional clothing material, or if you wanted to create a type of couch look like that. Depth, obviously. Oh, my eyes. Opposite direction, you're poking out, poking in, poking out. Can you tell the difference? It's like so slight. Poking in out, poking it in. The next one here is a horizontal stripe, so same idea, just horizontal. This one is lagging, I believe, is vertical. So same idea, vertical. You can create some really cool sort of blouses with these types, right? You don't have to work so hard, or you can even create a sweater with like this kind of texture. Or if you have like nylon, right? Or those sweaters that aren't quite warm because they're made of like cheap plastics. This one is your hash marks, and so you can just reduce the depth of it, increase the scale, and it'll look relatively good. You can do like really cool kind of waffle textures. This one again is your concrete. This one's a different type of concrete. Again, another concrete. This one is where you get like sort of a wall kind of texture. This one is a wavy pattern texture. So, ooh, can totally be interesting if you wanted to create like a background that looks kind of like that. Again, another kind of wall texture kind of thing. Plaster, maybe, is that what it's called? This one's another kind of like wall texture kind of thing. And so contour just refers to like whether or not you're going to drop a shadow, that kind of stuff. Satin has this ability, I think, to create like a sort of satiny kind of texture. Let's see if I can get it to look like it. It's kind of hard with this. Let's create a lighter color. See like how it's sort of trying to help you mimic the look of satin with like how satin does this kind of effect, right? But obviously we can totally do it ourselves. We don't need their help. Contour texture, pattern overlay, same idea as the texture, same things, but the only difference is that it's going to act less depth-wise and more flat surface. So this is going to be the things where if you really want like a shirt pattern to show through like that, this is where you would go for the shirt patterns. Let my Photoshop rest up a little bit. And so now we can play around with some of the more interesting patterns that you might see. So add a noise. If you add uniform, it's going to look like this. Add more, add more. Oh, so much. You can do Gaussian where it's a little less uniform, and so it's going to look something like this versus this, right? You can choose to not make it monochromatic. It could look sort of like a fuzzy TV screen almost kind of thing. You might do dust and scratches, which I think might be too intensive for my computer to see right now, or it might just be too subtle because dust and scratches is a very subtle kind of rendering edition. If we do pixelate, we're just gonna pretend that's what pixelate does, adds these like screen pixelations. You could also do crystallize. We'll do a good cell size, do something like that. Right, you see the edges kind of got sort of a little more pixely. It's very hard to tell. Facet. Don't think you can tell from this. Fragment, see, does that weird thing. Maybe if I add a different color to it, maybe you'll see it even better. Let's add one of my favorite colors, or one of my favorite color combos, because I don't like pink itself, but when it's paired with blue-green, I just love it so much. So let's try fragment. Yeah, it's just barely noticeable. Go back. We're going to pixelate mezzotint, and it's gonna do this. You could do medium dots, grainy dots, short lines, and then you can get really creepy and everything, right? Ooh, short strokes, long strokes, real creepy. You can also do mosaic, which is the thing you see when it's like pixelated art, right? Or if you're trying to censor something. It's a really cool effect, honestly. Then pointillize, and then you're gonna get these sort of pointillism kind of look, like if you remember George Seurat with his famous painting A Sunday on a Grand Logette Park or something like that. The one with the umbrellas and stuff. See, it's gonna do the work for you. So if you ever wanted to play around with like color like that, you could totally add that in there. I think some other things you can do are filter gallery, I believe, will let you go into more texture, right? So let's go through each one of them. Colored pencil, cutout, dry brush, film grain. You can sort of see it, right? Let me zoom that in and you can totally see how some of that texture. Fresco doesn't really show up very well. Neon glow. Palette knife. Sort of ugly in my opinion. Plastic wrap. Oh, that's so funny. I don't know how you could use this, but I definitely feel like if you're more into like the surrealist type of art, this could be useful for you to play around and test your colors and stuff. Rough pastels could be a really nice one. I really like how the edges look. Smudge stick, meh. Sponge, underpainting, again, meh. Watercolor, meh. Meh. Cross hatching, I feel like we would see it better somehow if there was more image to see. This could be fun. Spatter. Spade strokes, interesting. Diffuse glow. This one's really interesting, especially if you wanted to do like that illusion of the Sahara sun and then shining down like that. Feel like these ones work better for monochromatic works. Graphic pen, yeah, like it kind of ruins the original work. But note paper, it could be an interesting way to add texture to your work already, right? Water paper, stylize. Let's close some of these so we don't clog ourselves up. Stylize, we've got like a really, I think if you had more colors, it'd be more obvious. And you could, you know, edge brightness, smoothness, you can make it less smooth, more smooth. Edge brightness, bump it all the way to the max. Then you see like that center neon glow kind of thing. Edge width, then you'll really see it, right? Ooh, bow wow. Texture. They have their own separate tab for texture, but it's pretty limited in my opinion. I think you can download more, but I'm pretty sure you have to pay for those because I don't know how to design any of them. Grain, mosaic tiles, patchwork. Oh, these ones are pretty cool. right? You could do a brick texture as though like you're doing graffiti or something, and then scaling, increase that, bump that baby up. Oops, don't want it to. You can even change like where you're coming from, the light source. Right, invert it. Burlap. Oh, sandstone. Regardless, those are the options that Photoshop gives you for textures, and you can definitely just play around with them. There are still a lot more brush textures that I have yet to go through, and I'll just go through them real quick right now. Like, I highly recommend you just play around with them like this and like try what works or what you like. This stuff right here, right, could just add just a little bit of like interest to your work, help maybe say if you have like something here and disjointed from here, maybe add some dot splatters to help you bring it all together. Or like you can even, these ones, I think that's a mountain one. I don't know if it's even in the brush pack, but I have it. I downloaded it from somewhere. It's very nice. Kind of watercolory kind of thing again. Let's see what it's named. Linda Fob. It's pretty similar to this one in my opinion, right? You might consider using this one to do some of those like hair, just slight hair follicles and stuff. One of my favorite textures to do is the line texture, where it helps like just add a little bit of interest, and it's inspired by Sam Does Art because he does a lot of like the digital screen kind of effects where you have like the dotted screen tones. Let's see if I can find it. Right, like this one, dotted screen tone. It was very reminiscent of like the old manga days where they have like a lot of screen tones, and it just somehow really looks nice and helps bring a little bit more interest to your smooth skin or like your hair, or you're trying to break up that light, right? So anyway, hopefully that was a little bit helpful. When it comes to doing landscapes, same concept. Look for light, dark. You can always try to simplify shapes and try playing around with textured brushes rather than trying to create the grass individually with like just a generic brush. Obviously, some brushes might require you to like tailor it or like download specific ones, especially for like, say, leaves in the tree or whatnot, right? But we will talk more about environments in another video. And so for now, hopefully that was helpful for reviewing some of the brushes. And if you still have more questions, be sure to just look at my Google Doc that I included in the folder that I have shared with you guys. And you can always just ping me on IG, or you can, take the initiative, try out some brushes, right? It's honestly really fun to just play around with brushes and see what works and what fits your fancy. All right, bye y'all.